All right, welcome to today's show. Bitcoin smashes through 110,000. We get a big leap up. Strategy is teetering, almost about to break through 400 in the after hours right now. So, what does this mean for Bitcoin? What does this mean for strategy? Strategy continues to make moves and additional buys today. So, I'm going to break that down in today's show. And we're going to look a little bit about the M2, the money supply, and Bitcoin is tracking the money supply and how high could Bitcoin go based on the trend of the money supply. So we're going to get into all of that and more. Hello to you all. We're going to get rocking and rolling here. Of course, this is not financial advice, not tax advice, not legal advice. Do your own research, and this is for educational purposes only. All right, so what's going on in the world today? What is good? We got strategy, record breaking. Look at this, just 582,000 Bitcoin at an average price of $70,000 with a total investment of almost $41 billion into Bitcoin. Pretty cool, huh, guys? It's good to see you here, Jeff. Good to see you here, also financial. So we got some good stuff happening here. I mean, just look at this chart. Saylor announced again that he was making buys, and of course he did again on Monday, but he did not tap the ATM in terms of the common shares. He did the preferred stock route, which is a really cool indication of preferred stock being hot. And we like to see what he's doing with preferred stock because it's creating what I call an indestructible balance sheet, or I should say, I'm quoting Saylor as he calls it, an indestructible balance sheet. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So look at this chart. Look at the buys. Look at the trend of it just buy. The graph is just going up, which is exciting. So there you go. Big buys today for strategy again, or I should say consistent buys. Saylor posted on X, send more orange. He posted that on June 8th. And of course, today, strategy announces a big buy. 1,045 Bitcoin purchased. Last week, they purchased 705 Bitcoin. So they are up stat. Their statistics are going up, which is very, very cool. And also, we got last week on $1 billion stock offering. If you weren't with me 2 videos ago or 3 videos ago, I talked about the $1 billion raise on their new preferred stock STRD. And initially came out as a $250 million stock offering. And now it's a $1 billion raise, which is super cool. The structure of it is 11.76 million shares at about a 10% payout. And it's very similar to their Strife product that they have. It pays about a 10% dividend. And that is a third new preferred stock that they have in the marketplace. So if you look at strategy versus other Bitcoin holders, strategy, look at this graph. They're just smashing it, almost at 600,000. Can you believe that? Almost at 600,000 Bitcoin. Amazing. You got Mara down below. You got the United States holding some Bitcoin, and then China, which is not really interested in the gain. That's mostly through confiscation that China holds Bitcoin. But there you have it. Look at the graph. There's nobody even close to this company strategy, which is why we love them. And they're fantastic. It's good to see you all here in the chat. We got Anthony, we got Emil, we got Jeff. What's going on, guys? So investment performance. Let's just talk about strategy's aggressive Bitcoin acquisition strategy. The one thing that's been incredible about Saylor since 2020 is he's continued to buy through the market cycles. And as you look at new Bitcoin treasury companies popping up, we're looking at a company that consistently buys and is aggressive, which is why we like strategy. And they're up approximately 50% on their investment. If their average Bitcoin price is $70,000 in terms of what they bought it at, and then you look at where it is today at $110,000, in terms of the price they bought it at, they're over a 50% return on that, which is cool. Of course, they bought, they keep buying at different price points, but the more he buys later in the game, the higher the average price point goes up. But they're sitting on like $20 billion of unrealized profit. So when they come to their Q2 earnings call, which is happening end of June, the quarter 2 will end, and then they'll report on that about a month or so after that. and we will see what their unrealized gains is, and it'll be a huge wave that goes through Wall Street of people being like, wow, this company has $20 billion of unrealized gains. So it'll be big news when it happens, and certainly if Bitcoin continues to trend up, which it is today, smashing through 110,000. If at the end of June they're above $110,000, there'll be massive gains. So that's good news too. If you look at Bitcoin treasury companies, like what makes them investment grade type companies where they're worthy of investors, we can take a look at 4 things here. So number one, you have credit worthiness. So high credit worthiness and predictable returns. So when you look at strategy, they do have predictable returns with what they're doing in their company because they have these different preferred stocks that are paying out 10%. And we know that Saylor also is all about Bitcoin per share and increasing your Bitcoin per share. So his goal is to increase the yield, and that's exactly what he's doing. If you also look at them from a perspective of scale and trust, they have a large treasury. So the fact that they have a very large treasury and they're not just first in the game, meaning or I should say not recently in the game, like many other Bitcoin treasury companies, they've been around for a while. So they have a big treasury, they've been around for a while, and that builds credibility, and they've showed a consistent track record, which is pretty cool too. And they're very transparent in what they're doing as well. So we know that all along the way, Saylor says they're going to do X, and they continue to do X, and they follow the course of his goal and his vision, and they continue to do it. So they definitely have transparent operations. They've got a good corporate structure. And we've seen Saylor talk about this many, many times in relation to he's not going to stop buying Bitcoin, and he's going to buy the top forever. And he continues to do it. So if you look at just the more institutional money potentially flying into strategy in the future, because they are like becoming a solid company and a trustworthy company, they're going to just attract more and more funds into the future. And the larger they get, the more trustworthy they're going to get. The more they stick to their strategy, the more people are going to want to put their money with them. And the more they continue to offer up these products like preferred stock, the more they're going to attract institutional investors, which is what we want. And it's really good to see that they're not issuing just common shares all the time. They have multiple ways to actually attract investors, raise capital, and buy Bitcoin. And that's what they do. And they continue to do it, which is fantastic. If you just do a little side-by-side comparison to the left here of what's the difference between these preferred stocks and the actual MSTR common shares that I own. If you look at these two things here, to the left-hand column, you've got STRD. And so that's one of their new preferred stocks. And so I didn't put them all to the left because they're all very similar. STRD, Strife, and Strike. They're all similar in one way, that they pay out a fixed income to investors. Now, Strike has a little potential upside where you can convert into common shares in the future. But for the basic concept of this comparison, their preferred stock, it attracts institutional investors. It attracts people that want some access to a company like Strategy that invests in Bitcoin, and they want to do better than corporate bonds or government bonds. And so they invest their money into these preferred stocks like the new one, STRD, and they give Strategy their money. And instead of getting 5 or 6% rates of return, they're getting 10, 11% rates of return. So to the left, we've got STRD that never matures. So when you look at this quality, like a bond will typically mature, right? So a bond will have a maturity date, but STRD never matures. So it's kind of like you give Strategy $1 billion, and they take that $1 billion and then they buy Bitcoin, and then they just pay you off a piece every single year. So for example, with STRD, they just did $1 billion raise. And so when that $1 billion comes into Strategy, they buy Bitcoin with it. And so immediately Saylor's calling this an indestructible balance sheet, because $1 billion now goes on their balance sheet. And then what they owe and what they need to pay out is 10% every year. So they're paying out $100 million a year every year for the next so many years, which is in perpetuity. It could go on for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So it doesn't have a maturity date on it. So it's powerful in terms of raising more money to buy Bitcoin. And it has a very limited downside for investors, because there's not much downside unless Strategy goes, ass up And at the end of the day, these investors are going to get their money. And so it appeals to more risk-averse investors and larger institutional dollars, which is why they do it. Now, if you look to the right, which is MSTR, which is what I own, you've got direct Bitcoin exposure. So, we're buying MSTR, and as you buy MSTR, you're clearly buying it because you want the premium in terms of, MSTR trading higher than its Bitcoin stack. So when you look at it trading at a premium, like we expect that MSTR is going to go up 2x to what Bitcoin goes up. So people who buy MSTR, they want Bitcoin exposure, but they want greater returns, which is why they buy MSTR. So it has a higher upside potential, much, 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 much higher than an STRD or a Strife or a Strike. But again, it's for different investors, right? And there's much greater price volatility, and it attracts very growth-oriented investors, and you have to have a higher risk profile to be into this. So, if you really look at what's happening here, Strategy's kind of like got a menu for all different taste buds, and that's the cool thing. And they've got just, I wouldn't call it endless ways to attract money, but they have so many different ways to attract money right now that this is just a behemoth that's taking off, and nobody's going to catch them. So that's the difference. And, they have a primary focus of just Bitcoin acquisition. That's their goal. And if you look today at what they did 59% with Strike, and then 40% with Strife. So in terms of their Bitcoin buys, that's as a result of these allocations today. And, a minimal allocation of what they take in goes to corporate expenses. So the majority of what they're doing is going to buy Bitcoin. So that's how they do it. And they're not over leveraged at all. If you watch yesterday's video, they're definitely not over leveraged. So there's no danger of that. And they've got intelligent ways to buy more Bitcoin, which is cool. So it's great news. So institutional confidence is growing. It's no secret. Bitcoin is increasingly being viewed as a strategic treasury asset, being compared to digital gold. The number of companies that now hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet are over 100 companies. And years ago, it was a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of that. And Strategy's success has inspired a lot of other companies to get in the game, and more companies are jumping on board every single day. We've got a regulatory environment that's more favorable. There was news that just came out with what was the company? I got to go look it up. Jamie Dimon, he's the CEO of the company. What's the name of the company? If you guys know, put it in the chat box. But they announced today that they're going to allow you to use Bitcoin and as collateral and get loans off of it. And Jamie Dimon's company was like highly, highly, highly against Bitcoin. And now they're coming to the table and saying, great. So, you can take a loan off your Bitcoin. Like if you have Bitcoin, if you have an ETF with Bitcoin, you can take a loan off of it and we'll give you a loan. So they're coming around too. So you see all these changes in the marketplace, which is incredibly fascinating to see how fast this is growing and how far MSTR is going to go. Now, a couple other things I want to show you here, which is if you look at the M2, the money supply here, this is a great post from James at Invest Answers. He put this up, and it shows you here. So if you look at this here, you look at the money supply here. So this is the global M2 money supply. And so if you look at Bitcoin, so the yellow line is the M2 money supply. And if you look to the right here, you've got, the Bitcoin price at $110,000 right now. So if you didn't watch my video the other day, it was basically showing that how Bitcoin, the money supply is going up, which means more money is going into the marketplace right now. So we talk about savings accounts, checkings accounts, short-term deposits. That's what the M2 is, the money supply. And so I think there's about $120 trillion right now globally in terms of the money supply. And so the more the money supply goes up, what happens is people have more free cash on hand to invest with because there's more money in circulation. And typically in the past, when this happens, people put money into risk on assets, which would be Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin's not necessarily per se a risk on asset as much anymore, because when you actually look at Bitcoin, more and more companies are adopting it as a treasury for their company. And so it's being looked at as a risk on asset in the past, but it's not so much that anymore in the present, because it's becoming more of a kind of a stable operating basis for companies, and governments are getting in the game too. But for this sake, when the money supply goes up, people take the money and they just ape into Bitcoin. And so if you look at the trend here, based on the money supply going up to 160,000 here, and you look at where Bitcoin is right now, 110,000, Bitcoin's the green. If you look at the green and the red candles here, that's where the price of Bitcoin is. And so just follow that trend up with this yellow line, and potentially this is where Bitcoin could head if it tracked the money supply. So far, if you look at the trend, it's been tracking the money supply. You see this? It's almost like it's very, very spot on. It's crazy, right? So if it continues to follow the money supply, then we could be looking at $160,000 Bitcoin, maybe more. But that's only if it follows it. We don't know if that's going to happen. It has done it so far. This is just one indicator to look at and see if it might actually happen. And we'll see. You never know, right? But it's just cool to look at the data. The other thing, which I think was interesting, this was a cool interview that was done a while ago with Saylor. And I just love this guy put a post on here, but he says, the nation that prints money to buy Bitcoin wins. And so Saylor actually says in this interview that the first country to print money and buy Bitcoin wins. And he gives the analogy that STRD kind of has their own currency, because when they issue common shares, it's kind of like they're printing paper when they issue common shares. And then when they issue common shares, more and more people buy the shares, and then they take the money and they buy Bitcoin. So he was using the metaphor of like, as STRD, as a company, we issue paper, common shares, people give us money, we buy Bitcoin. And he says, if governments were to just print paper, right, just issue more money in circulation and print money, then they would take that money and they would buy Bitcoin. And his whole philosophy on this is that it would be accretive for the governments to actually do this. So rather than printing money to where it's inflationary and it screws everybody, because the money supply is going up by 6.5% every year. So the more money that gets printed, the more our dollar sitting in a bank account actually is worth less. It doesn't buy as much. So Saylor's saying it's only inflationary if you don't buy an asset that actually goes up. And so if the US government were to actually print money and they were to take that money and buy Bitcoin, and Bitcoin goes up, then the effect of that wouldn't be bad at all, because Bitcoin would be appreciating way faster than the actual money supply of printing. And so it's actually a brilliant strategy. Why a government hasn't done this per se, thank you for putting that in the chat box, Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan. So why a government hasn't really done that yet in terms of printing money to buy Bitcoin, I don't know. We have some companies that are adopting, some governments that are adopting Bitcoin, but why somebody hasn't like aggressively said, we're going to print this amount of money and buy some Bitcoin, who knows? It would be a smart idea to do it though. So that's what's happening with some of the news. Now we're going to take a look at what's happening with the short sales today, in terms of these guys got liquidated. So a lot of the short sellers got liquidated, and it's one of the reasons why you see the Bitcoin price going up. And there's some interesting data on this. So let me see if I can find this and share this with you. Good. So if you look at short covering driving the prices higher, so let's go through this. So prices, broke through 110,000. So as they go through to 110, 111,000, the short sellers begin to worry. And so what happens is short covering begins. So traders will actually buy back their Bitcoin to close out their positions. And so what happens now is the buying pressure then increases more demand and pushes the prices up. So price momentum builds and it creates a positive feedback loop, and the Bitcoin price could go higher. So it's likely we're going to see Bitcoin go up higher, I think, based on these shorts getting liquidated today. And good on them getting liquidated. Thank you, guys. Don't bet against Bitcoin. Don't bet against STRD. So there's no sell wall above $108,800. So there's like a clear path up. And so when you look at the resistance level, there's really no resistance above 108,800. And so there's very few sellers at these price levels right now. And so when it says sell wall, no sell wall, basically means there's an absence of large sell orders. So if there's no sell orders in and people aren't selling, then that means the Bitcoin price could go up more and more, which is cool. So that's good news. Bitcoin becoming harder to buy. if you look at the OTC buying, you got big investors who buy in secret on the OTC. If we look at the limited supply, there's less Bitcoin available on exchanges right now. So if you go look at the data on Binance, I was pulling this earlier, which is kind of interesting. If you look at the reduction on Binance between January and February, Binance's Bitcoin reserves plummeted by about 94%. And then you look at the decreased whale inflows in May of 2025 on Binance. Bitcoin whales transferred only $3.27 billion worth of Bitcoin to Binance. So that's one of the lowest whale inflows since November 2024. So basically the reduction, it's showing us that there's diminished selling pressure from major holders. And so that's basically what this is showing. And that's a good thing for us, which is great. And then there's a high demand because more people want to buy Bitcoin. So this is good in terms of reduced selling pressure. With fewer Bitcoins held by Binance and decreased whale activities, there's less immediate selling pressure on the market. So this could contribute to a leg up for Bitcoin, which is good news. And we like to hear that because I'd like to see $120,000 Bitcoin in June. So I just covered this. This is what I just covered. So I'm going to skip through this. And basically, just a recap of this, the market forces behind Bitcoin's rise are this. The price breaks 110,000. That's not a new all-time high. 112,000 is the all-time high. That's old news. But short sellers cover. So they're covering their asses. So that creates buying pressure. And then the price continues rising and it builds more momentum. So that's basically what's going on in the market right now. And let's see what happens as we continue on to the future. So that's the data for today. I hope it serves you guys. And ultimately, things are exciting right now. I think this is actually very cool. If you guys just joined us, this is a really good. I'm going to share it one more time for those of you who just popped in. But this is just a really cool post from James at Invest Answers. I just think it's really, really fascinating because this is such a simple indicator. If you're just joining us, we're going through this before. But this is the money supply. And so this is M2. So all the money in cash, checking accounts, short-term deposits, etc., all across the world. And so Bitcoin's following the money supply. And at $110,000 right now, you look at how closely the yellow line is the money supply. Look how closely Bitcoin is actually following it. So could we go up if the money supply is trending up here? Could we go up to $160,000 Bitcoin? It's possible. And we know in the past with COVID, a whole bunch of money went into the people's hands because the money supply increased. And during COVID, there was all kinds of free cash. And what did people do with those free cash? They invested it, and they invested in Bitcoin. So we saw a huge run up in price. And so maybe this time, as we're starting to see the money supply increase, and there's lots of talk that the government's going to start printing more money, and they're going to hit the money printer. And so there's typically a lagging indicator with, the money supply goes up and then Bitcoin trails about 3 to 6 months behind that. And the money supply has been going up aggressively all year this year in 2025. So right about now is when we should start to see some pumps in Bitcoin in the next month or so. And then you have a 3 to 6 month lag on it. So anywhere from 3 months, which is about now, to 6 months, we should see a pump up in Bitcoin. So if that's true with this chart that I just showed, then we'll see Bitcoin pump up based on the money supply. It's not the only indicator. It's just one thing to look at and pay attention to. So there's the news. It's exciting. Remy says the big beautiful bill means a lot more money printing. Very true. And Remy says MSTR needs to get that MNAV higher. That's right. We do need to get the MNAV higher. You remember the days of 3 and 4 MNAV? Wasn't that fun? Those were good days, right? I think we'll get back eventually to over 2 for sure. And it would be amazing if we got to a 3. It would be incredible. But anyway, cool things happening. Strategy continues to come out with great moves. So a recap of today's show is really simply this. The new preferred stock is hitting it big in the marketplace right now. It gives Strategy another way to acquire more money, to acquire more Bitcoin, number one. Number two, the short sellers got squeezed out today, which is good. And now they're covering their positions. So this is driving the Bitcoin price up. Number three, as we look at exchanges like Binance, There's less going on in terms of activity with whales on these exchanges. There's less activity in terms of the Bitcoin they have in reserves on these exchanges. So there's upward price momentum because you don't have the whales in there selling or moving the prices on these exchanges. And so that's good news as well. And then we also look at the M2 money supply that I just showed, and Bitcoin is following the money supply right now. So as the money supply continues to go up, there will be a 3 to 6 month lag on Bitcoin going up, and we're hitting that trend and that stride right about now to where we should see Bitcoin going up more. And of course, we're in this time right now over the next 6 months where this should be the bull run and we should see a big run up. And that's what I'm hoping for. And of course, Strategy buys another 1,045 Bitcoin today using their preferred stock of Strike and Strife, and they continue to do it. And they're not tapping the ATM and issuing common shares as much, which people like in the short term because it doesn't dilute the shares temporarily. So that's the basic news. Saylor's a total badass. He's killing it. And the final thing that he says is the first government or first nation to print money to buy Bitcoin will win the game. So one day some government may do it and catch Strategy, but right now Strategy is the champion. They're leading the way in terms of corporations, and we admire them for it. So I hope it serves you guys. Have a great rest of the day. It would be nice for us to get over 400. I don't know where we are in after hours. Let's take a quick look and see what the after hours market is. It was 397 last I looked. And yeah. So sitting right around 397 Strategy after hours. So good news. Hopefully tomorrow we'll wake up and we'll be past 400. I hope you guys have a great rest of the night, and I'll see you soon on the next show. Stay well.